Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to go through the season challenges for Her Majesty's Hussar. There's not too many here, which are too bad. A lot of them you'll do alongside of stuff you're usually doing, especially if you're following the Battle Pass. There's a few that you're going to have to work on though. I wouldn't say this season is as bad as last season when it came to challenges. I feel like these are a little bit easier, so I wouldn't worry too much. Let's get into the challenges. The first one is Calvary Charge, and all you got to do is destroy or help allied vehicles destroy a specified number of player vehicles, and it's 250. So basically get kills and assists, which cumulatively equal to 50. Since you have, 3 weeks to do this, and if you're doing the standard daily stuff and special stuff, I feel like this will get done anyway, so you don't really have to worry about it. Just remember, when it comes to these challenges, you have to be doing them in rank 3 vehicles or higher. The next one is out of the frying pan into the fire, and you have to receive a specified number of mission points in each of the following modes: air battles, ground battles, and naval battles, and it's just 10,000 mission points in each mode. This should be obviously pretty easy. The only issue is making sure you have rank 3s in each of the general, I suppose you class them as tech trees. This is why, I always promote doing stuff like naval challenges and things like that, or at least getting some rank 3 naval vehicles so you can easily get these challenges done and get some levels to the battle pass. Overall, this should be fine, and at the same time, it's you have a lot of different game modes you can choose from, so it should be easy. Then you have Dashing Courage, which is get 30 awards of Adamant. Now, Adamant is basically where you take a ton of hits and they don't do critical damage to you. So you can technically get them in planes. It's not exactly the easiest thing. It's usually better to do this in heavy tanks. Stuff like the KV-1s, like the KV-1s S5, for example, is great for this. Even stuff like the M6 can be alright if you can hide the angle. And usually you want to do stuff like even Churchills and things like that. But anything which can ricochet a decent amount of shots and not do critical damage. Remember, in ground, critical damage is either when a component is knocked out and it's not repaired, or if a crew member is knocked out. That's the main one, which is seen as critical damage. So make sure to, have a look at that. This one you should also technically do over time, so it shouldn't be too bad, but it should be understood that doing stuff like the KV-1s S5 or lower tier heavy tanks is probably easier to do compared to other vehicles. Glorious Story is next, and you have to play a specified number of battles while destroying at least 4 player vehicles and capturing 1 point in each. So that's 15 missions, so basically 4 kills and a cap. This is going to be the easiest to do in ground or in naval. In air, it's obviously going to be a bit rough because you have to wait for domination missions. In ground, this will be the easiest. A lot of ground maps have what we class as home caps, so if you're in a speedy light tank, you're able to get to them pretty quickly and get the cap off, and then you can focus on getting the kills. This is one I feel like if you play meta lineups, especially around rank 3 where a lot of people spawn, this will be something which will be good and generally will work quite well. What I would probably do is something like this, is probably play around 3740 with rank 3s, get into a plane after getting a cap and maybe a kill, and then trying to carry from the air to get the other 3 or 4 kills that you need. That should work pretty well. It's 15 missions, so it could be a little bit hard for some people who are a bit limited on time, but overall, as long as you play the lineups that you used to, they shouldn't be too bad. So the next one's a bit janky, and it's Crazy Bravado. You have to destroy 3 player vehicles without losing your own while driving a strike aircraft a specified number of times. And you have to do it 10 times, which seems quite high for a 3-week period. So, in this one, you're going to have to focus on the major nations. The reason for this is because a lot of nations don't actually have any strike aircraft, and also, at the same time, they don't really have a lot of lower-tier strike aircraft. The other nation, which I think maybe is worth considering, is the Italians, because they have the SM-91 and also the SM-92. Both of these are fantastic strike aircraft, which can work very well, and also have really good bomb loads, so you can do it in ground. Also the IL-10 for good old China. For US, Germany, and USSR, you have the IL-2s, you have stuff like the ME-410s if you really want to, but I think something like a Pulkistora is probably a better idea, the ME-262A1U4. And then for America, you have a ton of different ones. So the AM-1, the A-26s, the AD series, even something like the F-3D if you want to carry in good old... in good old air. That might be, a way to go for these things. But what I would do is I would probably play 5-7 America, get in the Hellcat, get a cap, and then maybe scouts and a few kills, and then from there get in either the AD2 or the AM1, depending on which one I was feeling at that time, and then use that to bomb targets and then dogfight, and that's probably one of the easiest ways of doing it. The AD2 can carry 3 1,000-pound bombs, so it's very easy to guarantee at least 2 kills on the ground. The good old AM1 carries 3 2,000-pound bombs, so you can do that as well, and then once again dogfight afterwards. With the IL-10, you'll be more gun-focused, but that also can work very well in your favor. This one is just kind of annoying, I feel like, just because the strike aircraft thing, you're going to have to focus on researching out those vehicles if you don't have them already right now. Fortune's favourite is also here, which is receive 10 awards of professional. We should be used to professional by now, since it's been in a lot of the battle passes, but they've actually updated the awards wiki where it actually says what these things are properly, where before it would just say something like, get a number of streaks. Basically, it says, reward for destroying 5 vehicles in a single match. Each kill after the 5th rewards the player with another professional award, i.e. 7 kills would reward the player with 3 professional awards. Now, this is a good clarification. I'm happy that they've updated the wiki for this. It makes my job a lot easier. But basically, yeah, you need a bunch of missions where you get a bunch of kills. Doesn't matter how many times you respawn, by the way, so you want to play the game modes where respawning is high, stuff like rank 3 ground realistic or rank 4 ground realistic, for example, fits really well in this, or Air Arcade is also another one, which can work very well for this. The other game modes are usually limited in spawns to 3, whereas something like Air Arcade, you can spawn in pretty much as many times as you want, especially with backups and stuff, so it won't be too hard to do the professional one if you stick to those 2 game modes, ground realistic and Air Arcade. Intense Excitement is destroy a specified number of ground and naval player vehicles, each while using unguided aircraft rockets. So you have to kill 10 vehicles, whether it's naval and also tanks. So 10 naval vehicles and 10 tanks with unguided rockets. So there's a few here which definitely will make it easier for you if you want to. Stuff like 3.0 American Naval is very good for this because you can bring along the Hellcat. The Hellcat has access to Tiny Tims. If you even land a Tiny Tim near a PT boat, it will just explode. You can also bring along a Corsair, the F4U1D, which has access to HVARs. And since a lot of coastal vehicles don't have a lot of armor, you can just launch the HVARs at them and they will just go pop. So 3.0 American Naval for that is pretty good. Early tier destroyers are also pretty good at that, but you have to target the coastal machines, not the destroyers. If you go after the destroyers, you're going to have a much harder time just because they have a lot more survivability than some of the coastal vehicles. So you want to try and go as low as possible when it comes to that general setup. The unguided rockets for ground, also one of the things to understand is a lot of high explosive rockets will actually overpressure AAs. So around the mid tiers we have a lot of open top AAs such as ZSU-37s, Warbonds, Oswins, Bosvarks, BTR-ZDs. All of these things will get overpressured if you just land some high explosive rockets near them. So even stuff like the Japanese, who have some pretty weak rockets on a lot of their vehicles, they can actually overpressure stuff pretty effectively with them. So, stuff like the Type 5 number 6 Mod 9 rockets, or the good old Type 5 number 1 Mod 9s with the 945 gram of TNT equivalents, they can overpressure AAs. So that is usually the easiest way to do these things. So mid-tiers, and then just going after open top AAs. I know it may seem a bit daunting, but a lot of people with gun AAs are not exactly great at aiming them. And when it comes to naval, aiming for the PT boats with some of the larger rockets, whether it's the ones on the Mosquito, or whether it's stuff, as I said, like on something like the Hellcat with the Tiny Tims, or even the Bearcat with the Tiny Tims, if you want to go that high BR. But I would advise against it. Around the 273033 area is where to focus on to get those PT boat kills. The next one is Elite Squadron, which is receive a specified number of mission points where vehicles of the current season of the Battle Pass were used, and this is 20,000 mission points. Now remember, you just have to use the vehicle. You don't actually have to, finish in the vehicle or anything. You just have to spawn in it. One of the things you can actually do as well, if you want to, with them, is you can click to spawn in them, and then cancel and go into something else, and that counts as it's actually being spawned into the battle. It's something you can actually do with some other things as well. If you want to run a rank 2 lineup, but you want a rank 3 vehicle to be able to get dailies and stuff done, you can actually do that trick as well. This can be useful with a few vehicles, stuff such as some lower tier AAs, like this 43, which is a 2-7, for example. You can click to spawn that in, not spawn it in, and then spawn something else in, and technically it counts as a rank 3 setup for a daily instead of a rank 2. Just a little tip and trick, I suppose. The other thing as well is if you are not paying for the Battle Pass, then you've got to make sure that you get to level 51 by the time that this one comes around, so you can use the J26, since that's the free one in the Battle Pass. So that should be something you aim for if, that's what you're looking at. Roadhouse is next, and it's destroy a specified number of player air vehicles using aircraft defensive armaments with a caliber of at least 35mm. So you have to destroy player air vehicles. So this isn't a ground pounding challenge, which a lot of these have been. The USSR is generally the best for stuff like this. You have obviously the Ac-9T, and with the air target belts, the Ac-9K as well. Just donk in something like ground, where you can just dogfight people and just try and bonk them with those. Another one is actually the MiG-15s, the MiG-15 and the MiG-15 bis. They're actually in pretty good matchmaking right now, especially the MiG-15 at 8.3. So you could use that. You could even use the MiG-9s if you wanted to, since they have the 37 on it. You just have to make sure to set your controls so you fire primary and secondary differently on the good old weapon setups, the small caliber guns and the large caliber guns. So you only fire one of them instead of both of them, or you could do weapon selection, I suppose. I think that works with the guns. I might be wrong about that. So that would be something to look at. There's a bunch of other donkey machines that are around the place if you want to, but those are the ones which will be the easiest to do it with. There is stuff like the heavy fighters for the Japanese, the Ki 102 and the Ki 108. You could maybe go bomber hunting with those. That could also work pretty efficiently. But I think just sticking to the Soviets or the Chinese with things like the J2 or the MiG-15 or the Ac-9K and the Ac-9T are definitely the way to go to make your life a bit easier. The next one is Fearless Badass, and this one is destroy a specified number of player vehicles at a distance of less than 50 meters. So you have to kill 10 vehicles from less than 50 meters. Obviously, this is a ground challenge, either ground arcade, sim, or realistic. Whichever one fits the bill. Realistic, I think, would probably be the easiest to do this in. So yeah, I don't think you'd need to rush this one. I feel like a lot of these situations are just going to happen anyway, especially if you're flanking things and then, going around the side and going and cutting into areas. So for me, I think overall this one won't be too bad. I suppose fighting around cap points and meta positions is probably the way to go for this one, so you can kind of face off against the enemy and then just win the trade, and that will mean that you get the kill at 50 meters or less. Skilled Lunge is destroy 2-player vehicles in 15 seconds, the specified number of times, which is 15. You can do this in Air Arcade quite easily, especially with the mothballs around stuff like domination caps and all of that. In Naval, it's not too hard to do at the lower levels of Coastal, and then also in Ground with some pretty crazy autoloading things. I'd actually recommend the mid-tier French autoloaders for something like this. Just go on a flank with your mobility, hit 2 vehicles from the side, bish bash bosh, there you go. Doing it 15 times is a little bit annoying, but with a few days of dedicated playing, specific vehicles in specific ways. Stuff like the Delac Torn could even do something like this quite efficiently. Anything with a reload, which is, 5 to 10 seconds, should be able to pop 2 people pretty efficiently while doing this setup. The first seasonal challenge, which is opened up at level 21 of the Battle Pass, is Big Game Hunt, and this one is destroy a specified number of player-controlled blue water ships with torpedoes using a coastal fleet vessel. You have to destroy 10 vehicles. So the best place to do this is at the lowest of BR, something like 3.0 or 3.3, so you don't run into the 5.0 or 4.7 destroyers, which actually have some pretty good secondary armament. Going at 3.0 or 2.7 or somewhere like that if you can, and using stuff like the PT 565 for the Americans, or something like the good old S100 at 2.7 for the Germans, basically means that you will face a lot of early reserve destroyers. These reserve destroyers don't have a ton of secondary armaments on them, and also you can sneak up on them if you use the islands effectively on a lot of the maps. This means that you can take them out, launch all the torpedoes at them, and then run away and set up again. If you want to go a little bit higher, there's a few vehicles you can do it with, but I would say it's probably not the best idea, one of them being the PT-811, which was a event vehicle from Operation Frost. The PT-810 is, I suppose, more of the standard tech tree one that you can do it with, but once again, it's just not a good pick and not a good choice to try and do it with. Same with stuff like the Jaguar for the Germans, or even other vehicles for the USSR. The USSR stuff like the good old the PR-123K can do this. I think the way that this mission works, at least it did in the past, is you can use torpedoes of a rank 2 vehicle and then spawn into a rank 3 vehicle and it will count as it. If it doesn't, then that's a problem, but at least, there are some options you can do rank 3 and above. The Dark Aggressor, for example, for Britain, is one that can be used. The Brave Borderer is probably a better choice for something like this, and also stuff like the PT-15 is pretty good for Japan. So this one's going to be annoying, but at the same time, it's one that happened in the past as a challenge. It wasn't something that was too hard to do. You basically just need to sneak up on them on some of the island maps that exist. The second season challenge can be accessed at level 40, and it is the Hussar Ballad. This is receive a specified number of streaks, has to be either 7 awards of Hero of the Sky, Heavy Metal Hero, or Terror of the Sea. Obviously, you want to get access to this as soon as possible, since these are some of the harder awards to get in the game. Basically, it's the ones where you have to kill the most, and also be the highest on both sides of the equation. So, for example, Heavy Metal Heroes destroy the most ground vehicles of other players, not fewer than 12 in Arcade, and then 6 in RB or SB. Hero of the Sky is the same, but with aircraft, and then also when it comes to good old Terror of the Sea, it's the same for that as well, which is destroy the most ships in naval battles, can't be fewer than 12 or 2 or 6 in RB. So that one can be really tough. You need to have the most kills in the game, and also at the same time have more than a specific amount. So for me, stuff like ground realistic is the easier one to do this with. Once again, unlimited spawns technically, and also at the mid tiers you have quite a few meta lineups to be able to run with them. Just remember, it's about ground vehicles of other players, so not necessarily air vehicles, so just remember that when you're going on your focus. And the reason why you want to try and get this one as quick as possible, so you give yourself the most time as possible while you're doing the other awards. Maybe you can get a few of these and then focus on it near the end of the season when crunch time comes in. There are a ton of lineups which work very well for stuff like this. 5-7, 6-7 for a lot of nations is very powerful and works good. One of the lineups actually which may be worth considering is the 4-3 one right now, with good old Britain with the Churchill NA-75 and also the Concept 3. That one can be very powerful. Then also stuff like the 4-7s for Japan, the 5-7s for China, and then even stuff such as the 3-7 lineup for Italy, since you have the M4A4 and the 90mm Semavente at 3-7 at rank 3. At level 60, you have the last challenge to unlock, and it is Masterful Sabrage. This is destroy a specified number of player vehicles using an unguided bomb while at a distance of at least 4,000 meters from the target at the moment of impact. So you have to destroy 5 vehicles with this. Now remember, that means that you can launch the bomb, get away from the target area as quick as possible, and that is what counts. So you don't have to drop from 4 kilometers. It's more of the good old hypotenuse when you look at the setup, right? So there are some obvious ones to pick for this. Even stuff like the IL-28, by the way, could work for this with the 3,000 kilo bomb if you're just dropping it on a good old spawn or something, or just an area where you know there's a target and then trying to run away as quick as possible. But stuff like the P8, obviously, with its 5,000 kilo bomb. You also have the additions of the bigger bombs for the Lancasters. So the Lancasters recently got the 8,000 pound and also the 12,000 pound HC bomb. That one is probably the one to go for. So climb high, drop it on a cap, and then run away. You also have a bunch of other ones you could do with, technically even the B-29, right? Like the B-29 with its 4,000 pounders nowadays, you could just drop them on a spawn and then carpet bomb it a little bit and then try and get away as quick as possible. The main thing that's going to be interesting is taking a vehicle and getting it to a height of probably 3,000, dropping and then running to try and get as much distance as possible. I'm sure there are many people who are well versed in this, especially ones who play stuff like the PE8 and the Lancaster, but for me, not so much, so we'll have to see what goes on. Remember as well, this can also work in naval, and it might actually be the easiest to do in naval since a lot of the ships, especially destroyers, are very large targets for many of these bombs. PE8s are incredibly good at sinking stuff like destroyers, so definitely worth going for in that way. So don't just see this from a ground realistic point of view, you can also see it at a naval arcade or realistic point of view where this can work really well. The last challenge is Courage Award, and this is just complete all the season's challenges. So you basically get an extra 4.5 levels, I believe it is, by doing all of them. So technically you get 7.5 since you get like the last challenge as well. And that is pretty much it. Looking at these challenges, there are a few which stand out to be kind of annoying. Obviously, the good old Hero of the Sky, Heavy Metal Hero ones are always a little bit annoying. And then the Strike Aircraft one is probably the one which I look at and think is going to be the one which, you know, sticks out and is a little bit annoying. I suppose the 35mm one as well won't be the easiest, but most of them I think will be fine. The Blue Water Ship to Coastal one will be kind of annoying, but not a huge deal. That's just more map dependent compared to anything else. So overall not too bad, a lot easier than last time, which I think is quite nice to see. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Millie Draper, Juan the Panda, Nick R. Kupila, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie B. Young, Peter Grayling, Jerry Provolt, Bareen, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, Derek R., and Lafouche for supporting the channel.